Hi, I'm Jimmy Martin with Redneck Knife Works, and today we're going to be talking about blade tips. This is a question that we get quite a bit across our sales counter, and that is, why are the tips shaped so differently and what are they used for? So especially on our EDC knives or everyday carry knives, tip selection is just as important as anything else because the tip defines what you use the knife for in some very specific ways. So first off, we're going to talk about the tip. The tip of the knife is this portion of the knife, and the way that it interfaces in, or the way that it finishes the job, and we'll talk more about that. But there are different shaped tips, and we're going to give just some specifics on it. Real quick video. We're not going to go into extreme depth about how they're done or anything like that, but we are going to talk about the differences in them. So while I have this one in my hand, this is one of the most commons that you'll find, or most common tip types that you'll find in an EDC type knife. This is what's called a drop point. We use the term point or tip kind of interchangeably, but what that means is that the spine of the knife, this is the spine of the knife up here, it goes down and it actually bends down to connect with the cutting surface there. So that is called a drop point knife. Drop point knives are a very efficient knife. They give you a long cutting surface, but they also center the tip of the knife in with the handle, or that's the purpose of it. So if you're looking at this type of a knife, you want to make sure that that tip is in line with the handle so that if you have to puncture something, that the thrust of it goes in line with that knife handle. So the tip actually has a lot to do with what's going on. A lot of times when you have to cut, say that Amazon package is getting unruly and you have to go in for one of those punctures on the tape, you want to make sure that that is in line, or any other reason why you might want to stab something. But that is a drop tip knife. The reason why they don't just do like this is called a clip point knife, and it literally just looks like somebody clipped a part out of the knife. That's where it got its name. But if you'll notice, the tip is still in line with the blade. It's a little higher on this one, but it is still in line with your handle, in line with the blade. So you still have those thrust capabilities, except it doesn't have all of that material to reinforce the tip. Okay, so a lot of material here to reinforce the tip. So if you have to do a lot of puncture work with your blade, you want that to be steady. Also, it gives you a little more shock value all the way up the tip in case you have to bang it into things, or say baton it through some wood, or anything that you may have to do in an extreme situation. This is lacking, but this actually punctures a little better because it gives a smaller profile here on the tip. So if you're going to be doing precise puncturing, this one's a good one. You see this a lot in Bowie style knives. As a matter of fact, a lot of people call this a Bowie style blade. It's actually not. It's just a clip point style blade. A Bowie has a clip point style. But this is more what you would see on Western knives and that sort of thing. And that's because they would actually use their knives to puncture. So they had a wounded animal or something like that, and they had to help it along into the afterworld. They would have to use the tip of their knife so that they wouldn't have to fire another shot, because bullets were expensive back then. So this refined tip made it an excellent fighter. It made it an excellent cleaning knife, skinning knife, and it took some weight off of the end. So that's the purpose of that. Now, the next knife is called a trailing point, or a trailing tip knife. And the reason for that is because it's just a nice grind. This is flat, or sometimes even above. If you'll notice, the tip is at the top of the handle here. Or sometimes it'll actually come up like in fillet knives and that sort of stuff. The reason for that is because if you measure the cutting surface on this, this type has the longest possible cutting surface from here to here that you can have on a blade. Whereas these have a shorter, because the tip comes down, so you actually have that much that the tip would finish out. So on this knife, you have somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch less blade surface to cut with. Where is that important? That's if you do a lot of elongated cuts. If you do like a lot of skinning, or you like to start your cut here and then bring that cut all the way around. This gives you a longer cutting surface and is usually used for slicing and those sort of applications. Now, you'll see in a lot of our knives that our drop point knife is one of the more populars. We get a lot of requests for drop point knives. Even in our upper line EDCs, this is still a drop point type of a knife. So that one is a pretty popular one. The clip point, you don't see as many of the trailing edges that you normally see, but a lot of your Skinners and stuff like that will have that. Now we're going to talk about one more type of tip, and that is a specialty type of tip that we do. This actually is fashioned after an old-timey straight razor. It has a really nice hollow grind on it, but this is a specialty tip that we can do. One tip that we actually don't have on here, we don't do a whole lot, it's called a spear point tip, and I just want to talk about it a little bit more. And that is, if we were to drop this tip further down and make it look more like a dagger, that would be a spear point tip. So that is obviously used for more in weaponry and that sort of thing. So not so much in EDC type carry knives, unless you carry a dagger for an EDC. So each one of those tip designs will help you out. I hope that short little blurb will give you some information on how you use your knife, what your tip design, and stay tuned because we'll have another video coming up and we'll talk about the actual grind surfaces on the knife and how that changes the coefficient of your cutting. So we'll see you next time. Have a great day.